Thank you for joining us on the Use Systems Collaborate to Innovate podcast. My name is Chris Stott, CEO of Lone Star Data Holdings, and I'm joined today by Marcus from Leadfile and Wes from Ethet. Gentlemen, there's a lot to cover. There's a lot happening in the industry, but the work that both of you are doing is tremendous.
Yes.
It's game-changing, and it's bringing other industries into the data center industry in a very unique way.
Yep.
So what I want to do is, I'll start with Marcus, because you're like right across from me, Marcus.
Yep.
But if you could maybe talk about the amazing things you're doing at Leadfile, and I don't say amazing lightly, even more amazing, not that it's competition. But Marcus, maybe talk to us about what you're doing at Leadfile and what you're bringing to the conversation and what's happening there in Norway.
So we're a data center operator. We build and operate a data center. It's a very unique facility though. It's in Norway, built in a former mine, underground, under a mountain next to a fjord, on Nordfjord. And there's really no other underground facility that's on this scale. The mine itself was a former olivine mine, so they're removing material in bulk, which left huge underground spaces, like cathedral-sized underground spaces, into which we can now build big data halls to house high-performance compute and AI GPU applications. That's what we specialize in. It's unique. The only downside is there isn't really another mine like this for us to build the second site into. But the existing site is huge. The mine's, easily 1 million square meters floor space. It's 5 levels. We're currently building out on level 3 out of the 5, and we're gonna in just level 3 alone, we're gonna end up stuffing in probably 120 to 130 megawatts worth of power. We cool the site using water from the adjacent fjord. So we pull cold seawater in from 100 meters depth, run it through a set of heat exchangers, pump it back out into the fjord, or there are plans for heat reuse as well, with a salmon farm that's due to be built adjacent to our site. So we'll be able to provide them with all the hot water they can take. And, warm water. Hot water is an exaggeration. And it's all hydroelectric power. That's a good green solution, making use of a disused former mining facility.
I was going to ask you, how did you get hold of the mine? Is it the mine company, or was it like, hey, I'm walking down the road one day and there's this empty mine, what's down there?
I mean, it wasn't me, but the original founders of the company, who are located, and they live in the town, nearby town, it's maybe 20 kilometers distant. The father of the founder used to work in the mine, so he knew about the mine, and I guess about 2010 or so, they had the concept of turning this now disused mine into a data center. They thought it was an ideal space, and they've made it a reality. It took a good while. I mean, the site originally went live in 2018.
That's awesome.
And but now it's, with the explosion in AI and the demand for big, high-density, contiguous chunks of data center space where you can deploy, 20,000 high-end GPUs into a data center that can support, 20 megawatts of IT load.
Wow.
There's very few sites like that in Europe, and we're one of them.
Lots of questions.
Yeah.
But first I want to go to Wes as well. So Wes, so the idea of taking something that's existing and repurposing it to an entirely new use.
Yes.
So please tell us what Ethet is doing.
Yes. So basically, it's a story of finding. I was into crypto, Bitcoin mining, as you know, and that led me down a path of finding cheap power, sustainable power. And with all that being said, we found out that the grid is kind of an up and down animal, and sometimes it's not as it's marketed to be. Like there's fuel adjustment costs. You could sign a contract and you would think that this is the really good thing to be, and you're at a good price, and then all of a sudden you get these crazy things that come out of nowhere, and your budget is exploded. So we decided that we wanted to go behind the grid, behind the meter, so to speak, And with that being said, there's a lot of green initiatives out there. And biomass is one, gasification is one, obviously incineration. There's several companies out there doing incineration, but there's a lot of green results from what my discoveries came to. And we decided that's the greatest thing to do because, one, we're not monitored by the grid cost. Our cost is more, we get paid to take things that are harmful to the environment and repurpose that to energy. And therefore, if we can create a use case that energy now is going to be used to power the cancer research or power colleges or banking industry or whatever, we feel like that we're doing two folds of helpful to the environment.
So you got 2 locations at the moment?
We got multiple locations.
Things, right?
We got multiple locations, yes. We got some in Michigan and some in Kentucky. Yeah. Obviously, some is garbage and some is like old railroad ties that obviously the railroad tie industry, they have to remove the old wood and put underneath the railing because it gets old and whatnot, but it is harmful to the environment. So we are in charge of kind of trying to destroy those old harmful railroad ties that would be lethal to the environment. Mm-hmm. And then your typical garbage that comes out of your house in Kentucky, we obviously can gasify that and create a renewable energy from that, and then obviously power a really high-end data center from it.
So how much? So up in Michigan, you're taking the railroad ties.
Yes.
And like chipping them.
It's grinding up. Some of the rail ties have a big metal plate, and you have to get that out. But then typically you can just throw them through the grinder, and it grinds it up. And then we're also looking to make a partnership with some of the bourbon distilleries.
So that's caught my attention.
Yeah, no, that one was really cool. I guess you get some free bottles of alcohol when you do that sort of thing. But the mash that is left over after a liquor is created, they can't get rid of it. And then in Kentucky, that's a huge thing because the bourbon is king in Kentucky. And one of the things that holds back the bourbon industry is getting rid of that mash. It's not the ability to create, it's the ability to get rid of that in a sustainable, environmentally friendly way. And we think that we have created that by being able to dry that mash out and use it in our facilities as a fuel source.
So how many megawatts at each site? And then Marcus yourself, so how many megawatts where's at each site, and what are you seeing? Are you seeing growth terms?
Yes. The megawatts is almost unlimited. It's kind of like coal. There's so much of this stuff. Think about trash. We had a little bit of a problem from Kentucky because like New York has enormous amounts of trash. Kentucky does not. We're not, especially Eastern Kentucky, we're not that populated to have that much trash. So we wanted to bring the trash into Kentucky Railway, and the states that was between us and New York were like, no, you can't do that because if something happens to that rail and you've got all that trash sitting on it, then it's going to be an environmental catastrophe, which, we kind of understood that. So that's what pushed us in the biomass, which is like North Carolina, for instance, has all this destroyed houses and trees and all that stuff that they have to get rid of. And there's no problem with that being railed into Michigan or railed into Kentucky and things like that. So, the trash is amazing if you were in the middle of Chicago, that you had enormous amounts of trash, but it's difficult to transport trash to another area in a mass way because our trash facility at 7 megawatts could do 5,000 tons of trash a day. So it's ridiculous the amount of trash we could have destroyed.
Well, and I was going to ask, so growth, Marcus, you said there's looking for new mines and then looking for different locations as well to go do this with. That's
absolutely
looking for partners in that?
Yes. Well, I'd partner with it,
We
have a bunch of abandoned mines in Kentucky. There's tons of abandoned mines.
One of the reasons, collaborate to innovate.
That's what this convention's for, to meet new people and hear new ideas. It was amazing.
Well, I love that both of you are taking something that was disused, something had been discarded.
Yes.
In different ways, and then finding a whole new use.
Yes.
and carbon credits as well from all of this.
100%.
And using the hydropower and then doing something that helps the modern day technological industry, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and I feel like that's the way it's going, because, I mean, if you just look around the floor at the amount of people that want energy is the biggest commodity. And you know, obviously we all know this. I mean, data is the greatest commodity man's ever created. I mean, it's better than gas, it's better than oil, it's better than coal. Data as a commodity is the greatest thing ever invented. Now, how do we make data grow? It's energy. So we have to have energy, and it needs to be in a sustainable, you know, the grid is only going to be able to sustain so much, and then you're going to look at other alternatives, and that's where hydro, you know, and then the way to be more efficient, how do we not use as much energy as we can? And I feel like, you know, that his company has figured out ways that we can. I mean, obviously it's cool in there all the time, so his temperature not going to be a problem.
Well, the nice thing is you're both adding without, you're not adding load to the grid, either of you.
That's what our plan is.
We are powered from the grid up in Norway. However, you know, we're part of the northern power grid. There's not that much demand in the northern power grid, so there's an excessive amount of generation up there, mostly hydroelectric, also wind. And another theme is that we're going to start to see emerge is that you want to have your big data center loads as close as possible to the generation, because there's transmission losses.
Latency.
And you know, right now, so in Norway, there's a interconnector with the United Kingdom, and Norway's, and on any given day, they're typically exporting up to 1.5 gigawatts of power to the UK through this ultra high voltage interconnector.
You guys are the big battery.
Yeah. Well, yeah, up in Norway, we're the big battery pretty much for Europe. Yeah, they've got interconnectors with the rest of Europe as well, but I'm just using the UK as an example because I'm familiar with it. And the transmission losses from hydroelectric generation in the north of Norway through their grid, down through this interconnector into the UK national grid, to where that, you know, power might be consumed by data centers in Slough, for instance, outside of London. You can be dealing with losses of up to 30%.
Wow.
And that's significant. You know, everybody's focusing on efficiency within the data center, you know, focused on the PUE number. But, you know, you got to look at the efficiency of the grid that's powering that data center as well, and not just the sources of generation. So yeah, it's going to be. I think that's going to become an important theme, moving these big, you know, training loads as close as possible to sources of generation.
That's what we're doing with Lone Star. You know, we put the first data center up on the moon this year.
That's unbelievable.
Thank you. It's getting well, I think what you guys are doing is amazing.
Yeah, no, what
fusion powered by the sun. That's
you guys are unbelievable.
Cool.
I mean, I look at you like Tony Stark or something. You should have a big Iron Man suit on.
Well, thank you very much. I'll take it. Thank you. What about what are the challenges you're facing? I mean, any regulatory challenges, getting people, equipment? Or what have you overcome to get to where you are?
Yeah. Yes, if you want to. I'm ready for this one. Regulatory wise, you know, for instance, let's talk about power, because that's what we're all. We got to have power. Every single one of us has got to have some sort of power. And you know, we talk about solar, we talk about all these different ways, and when you think of it, when companies get power, they get it in two mechanisms. It's a power purchase agreement, which is you're directly connected, or a virtual power purchase agreement, which you're buying RECs from, say, a solar farm that might be 5 states away, and you're offsetting your dirty power or your coal power, because when power goes in a grid, it's all power. That nobody can distinguish it except for this thing called the magical REC that these things create. Even myself, we create RECs. Biomass, solar, all these things. You can use that to offset if you were running on a coal power, say 7 megawatts, 10 megawatts, you could offset that carbon footprint with RECs you purchased through a virtual power purchase agreement. But when you think about it, Kentucky's a great example. Kentucky had all this mining going on, coal mining, years and years and years. Like there was 8,000 underground coal mines that used on the average of about 5 megawatts per coal mine. Enormous amounts of infrastructure, enormous amounts of energy consumed. But when you look at that and you say, we're going to put a big solar field up here and we're going to power 200 megawatts. So the theory is in a virtual power purchase agreement is that, I'm going to offset my power in California with virtual power I'm buying from Kentucky to offset. But if you don't consume the power up here in Kentucky, it's basically like a big lake of really clear water that's going in. Now, if that lake doesn't get consumed, somehow magically, that's the pitfalls, it does get supposedly consumed, but these wrecks are created, and now you're using these wrecks in other parts of the world, but are you truly consuming the clean power that's going into the grid? And that's the huge thing that people, I think, don't really understand that. And that's why I think our model is, when we say that we're a PPA, we directly connect to the data center to say that we're not a virtual. We actually power this data center with this biofuel that is renewable energy. We're not buying it and offsetting. So I think that's the huge issue.
Well, and has the state been? Have they been helpful? Have the regulators been helpful? And the state any friction?
Well, here's the problem.
You do something
yes,
amazing.
It is obviously, in my opinion, virtual power purchase agreements are not great for the environment, because you hear horror stories of people that could actually pump power into the grid from the back of the solar farm. Let's say that it's not a sunny day and they can I'm not saying it happens a lot, but I'm just saying there's so many ways to cheat that renewable energy credit system that are we truly getting an accurate number from what we're saving the environment? What is the true and accurate way to do it is do away with virtual power purchase agreement and say, if you're not connected to a power that is renewable, then you can't offset dirty power for what you're doing. And that's what everybody in this industry does right now.
Wow. And then Marcus, you're using hydro, then natural cooling, and
Europe
seawater.
is, of course, a much tighter regulatory environment.
Yes,
than, the U.S. and Kentucky in particular, and Norway even more so. In our case, we do happen to be plugged into a grid that is 100% powered by renewable energy. So we can.
So that's great.
We can be certain that
you're
every electron we consume has come from a source of renewable energy, whether it's hydro or wind. It's predominantly hydro where we are. But there's regulatory challenges still in the industry. In Norway, data centers are a topic of frequent discussion within the government. The Norwegian government actually introduced a 1.5 cent tax on every kilowatt-hour of power provided to data centers. So
so discriminating is you, boy.
You could say that. On the flip side, our industry body is becoming bigger, more powerful, and they're able to lobby on our behalf, and they're able to explain to the Norwegian government what the benefits of having big data centers are in the country, and why it's important that you have this digital economy.
Well, do people understand what you do and the benefits you bring? How much advocacy do you both have to do?
That's the other part of the issue. A lot of people don't appreciate what goes on in these facilities. They just know that data centers consume a lot of power, and some people feel that, especially in Europe, data centers consuming large amounts of power is partially responsible for high power prices in Europe. That's not really fair, but that's
I never even thought about it that way. I look at data centers as modern day cathedrals. This is the very underpinning of our entire technological civilization.
We all know when you have your iPhone or your Android in your hand, and if you misplace that thing, how important is it for you to find that thing immediately? So if you're not dependent on technology, you're not existent in the world right now. Everybody has an average of 12 devices that are linked to the World Wide Web and somehow. So if you don't think that data centers are important, and that's what people don't realize, it's like a hidden commodity that operates behind everything that we look at day to day. We just assume that it's like magic. And I've heard so many people, when they try to explain technology, they say, imagine it just, I don't know how to explain, but just imagine it's magic. You know,
the cloud is a cloud.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. You know, even some potential president candidacies explained it as the magic up in the cloud, you know.
But that cloud is in data centers.
Yeah, that cloud touches the ground,
yeah.
you know.
Real computers in data centers.
Yeah.
You know, the phones that everybody depends on, they don't work without data centers.
It don't exist in the cloud, brother. It's on the ground, you know, and it's powered by something.
There's a layer of software abstraction there that, makes it the cloud, but it's all hardware sitting in somebody's
somewhere.
Data
yeah.
But that's why what both of you are doing is so important.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, this idea of you're not taking a greenfield site, which is still good.
Yeah,
don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But you're coming in and reusing something.
Yeah.
And taking something that
connected
no one else would ever use for
directly to
anything
it.
else,
Yes.
right? And directly contributing everything from power to data centers and more. So I have to ask, the people you work with, former miners, guys who are looking after waste disposal, and all of a sudden they're the data center people.
Yep.
How is people and training and the mindsets? And it must be fun, right? It must be great.
It is.
I mean, we've got a handful of former miners still part of the company who used to work in the mine. You know, they're critical to the operations of the facility because they know the mine. You know, they know how to operate safely down there. You'll get if you come up to the facility and
I'd love
you
to
become
come
a customer, you get a
both, by the way.
We'd love to have you up. You get you'll get a good 2-hour safety briefing from one of the miners, and he'll take you through everything and all the safety processes around, operating the mine. Yeah, the reality is the operations that we're performing down there are significantly safer than when they were actually mining in the mine. There's no explosives, nobody's blasting, you don't have heavy machinery moving around. It's a much safer environment, but it's important. You get taken through evacuation procedures, and which is, bizarrely enough, in our facility, if there was ever, let's say there was a fire in our site, and you're getting a significant amount of smoke in the mine, you actually the procedure is to go deeper into the mine because the smoke's going to rise, and you have to go deeper into the mine. There's a shelter at the bottom of the mine, then there's emergency escape shaft that you would then climb up.
I was going to ask you how many exits you had.
Yeah, there's a few, but there's one main entrance that comes into like a big spiral road that spirals down into the earth. And, I mean, it's big. It's big enough for mining trucks to pass each other side by side, right? Two-way traffic. So you can drive, fully articulated lorries, an 18-wheeler, and
that's unbelievable.
It's like something out of a James Bond film.
Yeah, down the line. Yeah, and that's what we do. You'll drive the hardware right down, gets unloaded in front of the data hall. Awesome. So it's pretty efficient that way. Yeah, that's how.
So miners who become data miners.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
with me, I come at it at a different look because, I grew up. My father and grandfather. My grandfather was crushed in a coal mine, so he actually lived. It took 8 men to get the rock off of him. My father has worked in mines that were as low as 28 inches on his belly, like getting coal out of a mine. So to me, it was such a, environment is great. And I agree that we need to look at climate. I'm totally agreeing that. But for the government in the U.S. to look at coal mining and say, we're immediately going to just say that this is not good. You displaced families and a way of life in Appalachia that was unexcusable. I mean, they put us in instant poverty when they laid off and they stopped mining. And when that happens, people like myself that have families that were all in that and seen them put their blood, sweat, and tears into this, and now we're at a 30% unemployment rate in Eastern Kentucky because of that industry. We're looking for a new answer. and commodities, and yes, and that's what thank God our I'm going to give props to our governor, Andy Beshear. He helped out, and his father did too. He was a governor. They brought in this $2.4 billion network that went to Eastern Kentucky. Corporate America would not do it. Now we have the greatest speed in fiber probably anywhere in the U.S. to the main backbone of the fiber. We just don't have businesses that look at it to say we want to come to those areas. And that's what my idea is. I'm trying to be out here not only cheerleading for our company, but cheerleading for those areas that people say, hey, look, this is great electricity, great connectivity. Let's go here and build these facilities, and that's what we're trying to do.
So it's two of the magic things: connectivity, energy.
Yeah,
and then you got a positive state government.
Exactly, and you create jobs for people that are brilliant. They just don't have the opportunity where they're at currently. And for us, that's our big thing. We want people to not be given money; they want to work for money.
Oh, it's the pursuit of happiness, not the provision of happiness.
That is, you're exactly right. And that's our whole thing. It's pretty sad, really, that other people don't see it that way.
And then your background itself. So your grandfather was a miner, your father was a miner, and then you taught school.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I was a high school teacher. I worked in the mines a little bit myself, but that 28-inch laying on my belly was back 4 miles in a coal mine. My first cousin does that, but I'm just like, brother, that's not for me. But those guys, people don't realize where that coal power came from, and we basically fueled the Industrial Revolution. Ford had a coal industry up there, and that's what. A lot of people just don't realize. And Ford actually just building all these new battery plants in Kentucky, they're giving back, because they know they took a lot of resources from Kentucky, and Kentucky helped build them.
Well, Kentucky building the first industrial revolution and now building the second industrial revolution, the second digital renaissance.
The data revolution.
It is.
This commodity of data. Yep. And that's why I see the resources there, and I think a lot of people will realize the same thing.
And then, Marcus, this is a relatively young industry, data centers, right? And
yes.
It's all this new. And so what brought you to data centers, and how long have you been in the industry?
Oh, I was fortunate, really. I kind of fell into the industry. I moved to Canada I moved to the UK from Canada when I was, I guess I was 23, 24. And after a couple years of working some other jobs, I fell into an IT business that resold co-location space in some fairly early data centers in London. So this is like 2007, 2008, when the industry was really starting to develop. And I loved it. From the minute I set foot in my first data center, I thought, this is cool. Especially because nobody knew about these facilities back then. Like, nobody appreciated they were there. In fact, the first data center I went into was a level 3 facility on Goswell Road in London, and it used to be an old gin distillery. So you still had, I think it was Gordon's Gin.
You can still smell it.
Yeah, hey, they just the facade, right? Then you go inside, and it's like you've entered into like a spaceship or a nuclear submarine. It's a pretty cool environment, and I've stuck with the industry. It's been good to me. Hopefully, I've been good to the industry and grown up with it, and lots to learn, lots of information to absorb, and
always.
Yeah, and so I hear Kentucky Mash, I hear gin. I mean, we're starting to wrap up, gentlemen, because in a good way. And look, so is there something you wanted to say today? Something you wanted to talk about that we haven't touched upon?
Yeah.
Please, Wes, lead us. Is there something you think we should be thinking about as an industry? And
yes, it all based on energy and cost of energy and what that's going to do to every human on this earth. It all boils down to energy. So how are we going to sustain all these increases as technology increases in what we would say is a layman term, smartness, or the ability, AI especially? The more that increases, the more energy it demands. At this point, how are we gonna accept that? You know, are we gonna take from the individual consumers? Are we gonna take from banks and schools and take their energy away? How does that affect society when you've got this enormous drag on energy? So that is, in my opinion, the greatest question that we need to solve, is how are we going to address those issues?
Do what you're doing, make more energy.
That is correct.
Yeah.
I think so.
That's the only answer. Yeah. I'd take it a step further. I'd say that energy and economic output are one and the same. You cannot have increased economic output without generating more energy.
That is correct.
Right? I mean, we've fudged things a bit. Yeah. You know, a lot, especially in the West, we moved a lot of our heavy industry and manufacturing into the East.
Yes.
And certainly in Europe, in the UK, for instance, that resulted in the UK reducing our power generation by about 25% over the last 20 years. It's actually declined.
Yes.
Now we're seeing the effects of that, and it's not good. We need to onshore a lot of that, and we need to start generating more energy again. In the UK,
and become more efficient with what we have.
Become more efficient. I mean, on a household basis in the UK, we're pretty efficient. The UK is like the most efficient of all the sort of major industrialized economies on a per capita basis.
Yes.
But yeah, other countries, absolutely, there's good room for improvement. So that's a big part of the equation. But at the end of the day, we need to be able to generate more clean energy. That must happen, and we're going to need ways to store it. We need to solve the grid storage problem. How are we going to? That's not an easy one.
No.
To crack.
And the average consumer is just walking around, assuming that this is all going to be taken care of without their consent. But I think it needs to be a social, environmental movement to where everybody's involved to say, I can conserve water, I can conserve electricity, it just needs to be all of us. Just three of us, or even the biggest players in the world, can't solve this problem.
Well, and I love that, because you focused on the importance of data. The only thing every man, woman, child, and machine on the planet needs more of, faster, all the time, growing exponentially, and yet the energy underpins that. And even on the space program, that's everything we do up there is to benefit everyone down here.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's getting that space-based solar power, which is finally since the 70s now coming online. The idea of beaming the energy back from space 24 hours a day.
That's just unbelievable that you guys do that.
Oh, we love it. We have great fun with that one.
That is Star Trek level stuff that you would have never imagined.
Yeah, the decade of the 21st century.
That is so cool, man.
Data centers on the moon.
Yeah.
And then fusion as
Repeat
well,
the name of your business again, because I'm telling you, it is amazing. I really look at you like a superhero for what you guys are doing.
I have a great team.
Yeah.
Amazing team of people with me. It's resiliency as a service. The alternate and continuity of operations, disaster recovery, and then we protect your data, living, breathing, bright data, and we do it through an isolated network, direct satellite down to the planet from the moon and from lunar orbit. My team just kicked me. Lunar orbit, they're good on that, and we go down to some very secure and amazing partners here on the ground, and who are there to protect the data.
Yeah.
And
that is amazing.
Benefits and revenue and other things down here.
Well, again, it's the greatest commodity in the world. And you guys are right there helping it. So, we've got to make it grow. We've got to be able to fuel it. We've got to be able to efficient. It's everything we do together is what's going to make this thing move forward.
And it's right that entrepreneurs do this.
Yes.
Yep.
Right. Be on the cutting edge of everything.
Yeah.
So we're at LoneStarLunar.com. Big plug. But where's? How did they reach you?
Ethit.org. Yep, ETHIT.org.
And then Marcus, how did they reach you?
Left All Mine Data Center in Norway. If you need many megawatts of data center capacity in order to deploy your HPC or AI training array, GPU array, come talk to us.
Thank you. And come to us for disaster recovery and backup. It's a trifecta.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, are you all on LinkedIn?
We are.
Oh, yeah.
All right, please, same thing. Find us on LinkedIn. Come talk
find
to
me
us.
on LinkedIn.
Come talk to us about opportunities.
Yep.
Come talk to us about growth and mining and reuse of resources and energy. And there's so much to talk about.
Talk
so many recipes.
Yep.
So thank you for doing this today. Marcus, Wes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the US Systems Collaborate to Innovate.
Yep.
And I look forward to doing this often more with you. Thank you very much.
We need to have a bourbon.
I'm coming to both. I'm coming to Norway and I'm coming to Kentucky without any doubt. Okay?
Oh, great. We'll be right there.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.